Good morning, everyone. So, how's it been so far? Good? Huh? You liking it? So today, what I'm going to talk about is security best practices for AWS and user computing services. Before I get started, just show of hands if we say your knowledge on EUC is 0 to 10, and I would say who thinks they're like new, like less than 4. Can you just raise your hands? Like, okay. So we have good number of, so you just started, you just know the service, but you want to know more to be able to see if it helps with your use cases and your deployments, right? So I'll try to focus more on that level and then slowly build on it. The way we have architected this presentation is just a quick round of introduction about myself, and I have few of my colleagues also here who would be helping us out. And then I'll just talk about how do you protect your account, and then how do you protect your session, and then in total, what are the networking rules that you need in order to protect the data in transit. So this session is going to be around like 25 to 30 minutes, I would say, and then the rest of the time, me and the SME and the seller would be here to answer your questions, and let's have it more interactive. We have a chalkboard here too, so if we need to draw something out, we're definitely happy to do that. All right. Just about myself, I'm Hanish Kota. I'm the EUC Specialist SA here in the Southeast team based out of Atlanta. My main role is to work with customers with understanding their day-to-day use cases and be able to relate the EUC product or EUC services that AWS provides and how we meet their requirements. So quick introduction, here are the three main EUC products that we provide. One is Amazon AppStream 2.0. So it is a cloud centralized solution. It is non-persistent desktop, and it's mainly based on a browser-based or a browser solution. Then you have Amazon Workspaces. It's a more persistent desktop. So the big difference, I would say, between AppStream and Workspaces is the persistence part of it. So AppStream is non-persistent. It always comes off from a golden image that you have created. So let's say, for instance, you have like 60 users who are logging in. Like the best use case I can think of is like a lab. If you go to a lab and then if you have somebody trying to use a particular application, you can quickly spin off these 60 workstations, and users log in, starts using them, and then once they're done with the lab, the workstation just gets decommissioned. But whereas that is AppStream, but whereas Workspaces is more user tailored for the user, and like all the settings, configurations, applications which the user has installed would persist. So that's the big difference. There's some cost difference on the foundation level, but as a use case, according to use case, either AppStream would fit better or Workspaces. And then we have Amazon Workspaces Web. So Amazon Workspaces Web is a new offering which we launched during reInvent. It is a browser-based solution. Basically, it's a Chromium-based solution where the user can log in and then browse through their internal network or internal applications or log into some of the internal websites. The biggest advantage you would see with Workspaces Web is if you have a light use case where you just need them to access your internal environment, but not the entire infrastructure or basically other applications internally. So let's say, for example, time-based applications or time apps, like check-in, check-out apps. So you can always like lock it down to just a Chrome web browser, and people log into it that has internal connection to your internal systems, which updates their database. The thing with that is one advantage I would see is VPN, right? VPN is really expensive if you need to give it to like a lot of people who want to access your internal environments or just internal SharePoint websites just to give VPN. It might be expensive and difficult to maintain, but with Workspaces Web, it's very simple and easy to set it up. And it's, I believe the cost is less than $10 per user per month. So that makes it very cost effective and very useful for these kind of use cases. So these are the solutions, and this is the shared responsibility model, which I highlight with every customer, which shows how useful we are as a DaaS solution, right? Like if you're on the right, I'm sure you all are familiar with, is the on-premise VDI solution, where you manage everything from the rack stack to the physical security, to the load balancing, and to the image management. Everything is your responsibility to procure hardware, to maintain your hardware, to update your hardware, security of the hardware, physical security, and then the host login, the software which installs on these hardware and others. But when you look at the, when you move to the left, right, there is cloud VDI solution, the hybrid solution, where the infrastructure is managed by the cloud vendor, but the other components are still your responsibility, right? So the storage, admin, host, installation, configuration is still. But when you move to a DaaS solution like a Workspace or AppStream, your work is cut off almost by 80%. Almost all the components are managed and maintained by AWS. All you need to do is the directory services to which this app, these workstations are spun up, the policies that are associated to these workstations, and the image management, like basically which image you need to push into. Is it a Windows 11 or a Windows 10? And other components like those. So those are the big difference, I would say, between an on-premise to a hybrid to a VDI DaaS solution that we provide with Amazon Workspaces and AppStream. Any questions before I move to the next slide so far? Is that good? Great. And yeah, we can always come back to the questions in the end. I'll just go through the slides and then we can go what next. So this is the network infrastructure or architecture for Workspaces. So you could see here in the cloud, we have three main components which we highlight, right? If you highlight the VPC, I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer, but if you look at on the top, VPC AWS managed. So that's the managed VPC. And then VPC AWS managed by AWS. So AWS manages the main components of your AD connector to connect into your on-premise AD. And then the authentication gateway to authenticate into your Active Directory. And then the streaming gateway. Streaming gateway is the where the pixelation transfer happens to your end user. And then VPC customer. So this is the important component, I would say. The VPC customer, this is where you are responsible for deploying your the connections to the workspaces. So the workspaces are deployed in the AWS managed VPC, and then there is an ENI that get deployed into your customer VPC in two subnets. So we need two subnets, and then the ENIs are deployed there, and those subnets that's where you have your access to your end user, to all the resources that particular workstation or workspaces need to connect to. Like, for example, you can route it, all the traffic can be routed to your on-premise firewall filters if you need to, or you can route it to internet, or you can block it from internet, or you can just give it access to a different resource in a different region by using VPC peering or other networking functionalities there. So that's how the Amazon Workspaces looks like network. And then this is the AppStream 2.0 network. It's very similar to it. Just the thing is, just few differences I would highlight is the authentication. The authentication for AppStream is SAML based. So we integrate with your IDPs, whether it be Okta, AWS SSO, or Ping, or any other component. So that's managed by you. And then the streaming gateway, and then the fleet generation is all, scaling is all managed by AWS. And your responsibility and the customer VPC is to provide which resources you would want it to have access towards, right? So I just wanted to highlight this so that you know the section of where your environment would be exposed to, or what are the points of exposure for outside here. So if you look at it, the streaming gateway, which comes through, is on the internet, via the internet, and then the VPC, where the data is transferred, or where the components are connected towards. So these are the network infrastructure for both AppStream and Workspaces. What I'll do next is, now, as we discussed the components, now let's talk about where or what we can protect, or what are our security best practices, right? First thing we start with is protecting your account, right? So what our recommendation is to use is the Amazon Guard Duty. that helps you track any malicious activity, and then delivery details about if there's any violation or any security compliance issues you have. Then we have AWS Security Hub. This enables your hub to run and make sure we check all the best practices that are applied to your account. Then AWS Config. This is a prerequisite to set up AWS Hub. So this makes sure it keeps tracking all the login information and how we are maintaining who and when are they logging in. And then you have the AWS Cloud Trail. So you could see that it tracks the monitoring account activity for your account. So these are the 4 components which you could use for securing your account and protecting your account and making sure it meets our best practices. Then next you have the landing zone. So this landing zone and for using AWS Control Tower. So what the biggest advantage you have is, like, as a EUC admin or somebody who is working on providing these workstations to your end users, you wear different hats, right? There are different requirements. There are different people with different needs. So you don't want to give them access to everything. With the AWS Control Tower, you have the ability to filter on which access or what access you can provide to who. And also the best part of this is it is enabled, SSO enabled. So it helps you log in automatically into the app stream, into the AWS accounts. So that helps you with, that directly helps you with people with ease of accessing their accounts and their information and their resources. So you can, and also it ensures that some of the best practices are met, like you don't use the root account to create different resources. You don't have people providing direct access to your root account to create different instances and services on those accounts. So that's another key requirement for account-based, is to use AWS Control Tower. So now once you have the account configured, next thing is the inspection of your data, right? So a centralized inspection design is what we have built here, basically. If you remember the previous network slide, what we did here was all the traffic which was coming out from the customer VPC, we are routing them to a centralized VPC inspector. So that way, the traffic is inspected where your end users are connecting it from your workspaces, from the workspace itself. So this helps to ensure that first thing is you can filter internet, you can filter the IP addresses which they're accessing towards. It depends on the requirements. I had a customer yesterday in an education industry. They were working on providing access the desktops to the students, and they wanted to filter the IP address of what the students are accessing towards. And this is the architecture which we recommended for them, because this provides you the ability to filter what IP addresses you can access or what IP addresses you can filter. And also you can block some of those IP addresses and ensure they're meeting the requirements or standards set up by the security team. And here they have some requirements based on the county that they have these schools set up to ensure it is safe for the students to be able to use it. So this is a network architecture of how we recommend you have a transit gateway and then route the traffic through that to the VPC to inspect. So that's one thing. And then the next thing was the data, protecting access to the session, right? So here are a few things we can talk about is accessing the data from the workstation. You have encrypt the user data. So just a second, I'm sorry. So what you can do is whenever somebody saves their data on a workspace, right, or like downloads the data and then has been working on some important files, the data is at rest, and you can encrypt that data using different services that are available with AWS, like a KMS, or you can bring your own keys to be able to encrypt the data in the workspace. So that way you're ensuring and ensuring that the information that is there is encrypted already, the data at rest is encrypted. And then also you have different tools to control the movement of the data, like based on whether you can copy paste the data from the workstation to outside the workspace, or you can also block people from downloading the data from the workstation. So these are all some of the functionalities that are available in the service that you can enable, and that helps you protect the session itself, and also enable two-factor authentication. That's another best practice we have, is we support integrating with your Radius server, so you can always integrate and enable MFA to the workstation. And also with the IDP integration for AppStream 2.0, you can enable all the policies that are available with your IDP or your SAML provider to be able to meet the security requirements of accessing the session. So these are some of the things you can use to protect from accessing the data. And then also we have the ability to track the session information using the CloudWatch, and then also some of the Kinesis data firehouse services that are available. So we have some inbuilt metrics that you can leverage. And using those inbuilt metrics, what happens is that all the data is tracked on these services, and you can always go back and check on whether you have login times, or if the workstation is successfully logged in, is it healthy or unhealthy. So these all metrics are provided on these services, and you can always integrate it to understand the login information and the health of your service and the workstation. And here is a quick snippet of how do you pull in the logs for a workstation. So if you look at it here, you can use this on an event bridge and then save it so that you can get the information on who logged into the service to be able to create or deploy different functionalities. So it's a standard snippet from one of our blogs, so you can always refer to the log, how do you integrate with login, and I have the resources available in the end. But if you look at it, the detail type, the workspace one access, the resource is AWS Workspaces. And then I'm trying to action type, which I'm looking for is a successful login. And then we have the Workspaces desktop client. So this is the snippet to be able to track the log that you need to be able to understand who logged in or how they logged in. And then the next session is protecting the session itself. So we spoke about login, and now we want to talk about the session. So we started off with account, network, then the accessing the session. Now in the session, what are available, right? So one thing we recommend is patch operating system, so that I think everybody here understand how important it is to patch our workstations and the Windows operating system on which these workstations run on. So we have a monitoring solution, not a solution, AWS has a monitoring service or a function which we do, but also our recommendation is use your own endpoint management solution. We integrated with SCCM and few other solutions that are out there. So you can always leverage that to be able to push the patches that are required and track the patches that have been installed. And also keep your applications up to date. Again, the same endpoint solution which you have, you can use it to push applications to these workstations, and then make sure they're up to date and meet their security requirements. And then also the base image, patching a base image also is really important. So let's say, for instance, you use 2019, a particular version to build your workstations. Now a newer version comes in, then updating a base image would be helpful, because whenever somebody logs in with the older base image, all the updates come into the device. So it takes longer for them to go and start what they need on these workstations. So this is all part of the image management, which we discussed in the beginning, where you are responsible for managing the image. So these are some of the common best practices or recommendations we have for our customers to be able to ensure that their devices are secure and quick to use. And then Lastly, protecting the session, it's a little similar to what we discussed before. For protecting the session, you can use your GPOs that can be applied to these workspaces, because whenever you have these workspaces as a domain joined device, all the policies that are applied on the via GPOs get applied to it. And then also we have in Upstream 2.0, there is some level of DLP, data loss prevention policies that are available, like copy paste, downloading files, connecting to the printer, and few others by default. And also whatever you get through GPOs, you can also push and apply on these devices. So with that, I just wanted to quickly go over what we discussed, right? The three big components which we spoke about is protect your account. To protect your account, here are the tools which are available. So this summarizes what we discussed is the Guard Duty Security Hub, which ensures you're maintaining the best practices and all the compliances, industry standard compliances. App Config, CloudTrail, which helps you to monitor your accounts and account activity, inspection design, and then this all overlays on the AWS Control Tower. And then protecting access to the session is you can encrypt the data, you can control the movement of the data with the different security groups between the VPCs, and then you can enable 2FA and different IDP features on these workstations. And then logging, also you can track and save the logging into a particular S3. And then protecting the session itself, it would be you can patch these workstations, you can update these applications, update your base image, and you can leverage using antivirus. So we do support you installing your antivirus, but there are some exceptions that are required to be able to install those antivirus. So we have resources that talk about that. And then App Locker, you can even lock down your application, your workstation into just a particular app or a particular session, so that you don't have users logging into different things in that workstation. So this is a quick overview and different best practices that you need to apply when you scale your workspaces to use and provide it to your end users. So that's all I had. Any questions right now? And I have Chip and Russell from our team.
Hey, thank you. Two questions. One is support for non-Windows workstations, and the second is have you seen this work well for software developers to log in and do development?
Yeah. So we do support Linux, Amazon Linux 2 operating system, and we've been working with different vendors to get support for more. I don't have any timelines on that, but definitely Linux is another big use case which we have seen customers use. Another thing with software developers is, yes, a lot of developers use it. Me and Chip, who is right here, he's my seller. So we are also managing gaming industries. So one of the verticals which we work with is gaming vertical. And then they have very high intensive applications. Like you can imagine, like CAD/CAM, developer developing animation, other applications. And for that, we can spin up workspaces which have like 64 GPU or CPUs and then 128 gigabits of RAM. And these workstations can be spin up in 30 minutes, whereas we have seen like a lot of people having trouble acquiring these heavy workspaces because of supply chain issues or different trouble. So other day we were talking, there was a use case where they were taking 9 months to provide their developers with the desktops or laptops that are needed to start them working. But with workspaces, within like 2 weeks, they're able to get their developers to be able to work on these high-intensive, graphic-intensive compute instances. So. Sure. Any more question?
What type of floating desktop models in Workspaces are there versus persistent? I understand persistent desktops, but non-persistent.
Correct. So the question was, what are the floating type of desktops? Like persistent desktops is Workspaces, and non-persistent desktops, we have Upstream 2.0. So if you're looking for a non-persistent desktop, AppStream 2.0 is your solution. It is the way it works is just like any non-persistent solution is it bases off of a golden image, we call it, or a base image, and then the users use that application or uses that particular workstation, and then they disconnect it, and then that workstation goes back or workstation goes back into the pool. So you always spin up a particular set of number of instances that you think would be needed to be able to use. So AppStream would be your solution for that.
There's no plans for Workspaces to do that in Workspaces.
So right now, no. Workspaces is persistent, and AppStream 2.0 is non-persistent desktops for us. Sure. Okay.
Is there anything on the roadmap for mapping out always-on workspaces versus shutdown workspaces? I know that there's a cutoff limit of 16 or 20 hours. Again, there's a break point in cost when it just makes sense to leave that workstation on for the entire month versus turning it off and shutting it off. Is there going to be some way to cleanly do that without running? I thought I saw a blog post of a Lambda function.
Correct. So right now we have cost optimization as a tool that basically it's a Lambda function and you enable it. So just to take a step back, right? The Workspaces has two types of running mode, which is always on and auto stop on demand. So when you have always on, it's based on monthly cost. So it's a standard price for every month you use a workspace. And you have auto stop, where it is like whenever you disconnect, it stops and it goes to a cold boot state. And then whenever you log in, it starts back on. And the charge for always auto stop is less because it's based on hourly. So whenever it's 80 hours or more, I would say it would be more profitable to use monthly over auto stop. And the best option you have is the cost optimization Lambda function. There's nothing inbuilt right now. You need to use that blog, which would really help you to be able to.
And that function can shut them down,
Yes.
can change the running mode, or you can just get a report that says these workstations would be better as whatever running mode they would be better as.
Is that a Lambda function you kick off once a month just to reevaluate, or?
It can kick itself off, so we have a deployment template, so you deploy it, it runs once a month, dumps a CSV file out into a bucket, so you can evaluate, and then there's a flag you can set that says, go ahead and make the change for me. So you can choose to go ahead and make the change automatically, or review the report and make the change manually.
Yeah.
So I'm not very familiar with the Workspaces, but if we were to build an image for a workspace and we had a custom set of software that we needed to install for everybody, how would we go about updating those? Would we have to build a new image, or is there we would use something like Ansible or something else to deploy stuff?
You can Ansible is one of the options you can use. Yes,
option.
that's the best option to maintain. And also what we say is every quarter, make sure you update your workspace to be able to the image itself, so that you don't need to update every time user logs in. Okay. So that way it has a base which keeps going up and up. Like.
Okay. And I have another question. Some of my quality engineers use these machines to test something. So would I be using AppStream to spin them up in a pipeline and then bring them down
Yes.
after testing?
Exactly.
That
That's a common use case for a QA user, like testing their applications, right? Like smart scaling. You have users like for gaming, which me and Chip work around, is like they scale up to like 1,000 workstations, just run their application, see how it handles the load, and then they spin those down.
Okay.
So you can always use it for QA.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So if I'm trying to decide between giving somebody a Cloud9 versus an workspace as their development space, how would I make a decision?
So I'm not familiar with Cloud9. Is that like a cloud solution?
It's an IDE.
So what I would
Yeah,
say,
go ahead.
sorry. So what I would say for use cases like that, reach out to your account manager. They can always reach out to Chip, myself, or Hanish. We cover the Southeast, so the Atlanta area, and we can deep dive into that use case and understand what you're doing and decide, is Cloud9 the best route for you, or is giving them a workspace with their IDEs on it the best course of action? What we want to do is make sure we address your use case and address the cost of that to make sure you're not paying a crazy amount of money for Workspace when maybe all they need is Cloud9.
Correct. Like, I'm sorry, I keep going to the gaming, but I'm so familiar with the gaming industry, right? The Nimble Studio is another common use case. Like Nimble Studio, that's something similar to Workspaces. But is it always useful to have such a powerful system enabled or a service enabled? Is Workspace meets your requirements? So we always judge between and help you provide which is the best service to go about. Yeah.
What about in a case you have SSM set up, but it's not doing its job? So I go in, manually update the system.
I'm sorry, if you have SSN?
SSM, system manager, set up for your company, but
Got
it's
it.
not patching it.
Go ahead. You want?
So at this time, SSM is not supported with Workspaces. You can do a hybrid join, so it looks like it's an on-prem or a VM somewhere else. So if you're having problems with that, what I would say is reach out to support, get a ticket started there, and then again, you could always reach out to your account manager to have one of the specialty teams brought in to help with that too.
Yeah, and if you need that functionality, definitely I would say reach out to your account team to say that this is something we're looking for, so they can work towards prioritizing or providing more information to have it out of the box supported. Yeah, I know like people are living, but please make sure to fill the survey. It really helps me and the team to understand how we did and where we can improve or how well we can do with these presentations. Any more questions?
So one of the issues that my company's had and some of the users have reported experiencing is pretty significant latency if they're farther away in other countries.
Yeah.
Like we have a significant amount of Indian contractors from India.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll complain that it's running really slow, they're having performance issues. What would be a suggestion you would have to troubleshoot or remediate?
Yeah, and that's a common use case because most of the companies are globally spread out. They're working from home. So latency is one big problem which we see. So it's always useful to look at how, because our service is globally available in different regions, we always ask them to see which region works best. So sometimes like people in India and they have the data in, let's say, US East, right? So you can always check if your workstation needs to be closer to the data or it is to the user. London or like somewhere in the middle has been a good option for us. And also some people say, oh, it's fine, the user experience is most important. People can wait for the data to load. Then using it like region like Mumbai or Singapore is really common. Another advantage you'll have using those workstations closer to them is that it uses AWS backbone to reach out to the data. So instead of going through an internet over different hops and able to render their workstations, it's using AWS backbone, which is a dedicated line to your data. So it is much faster than what it's usually when you go over the internet to your workstations in East.
Gotcha.
So
Thank you.
Sure. I know, I can't see the audience. It's like right on my face, the light, so. All right, we good? Any more questions, team? Anybody? All right, great then. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and we'll just hang around here if you have any questions come ahead. Thanks.